On a freezing Sunday afternoon in December 1958, a cream and red station wagon was found abandoned deep in the Oregon wilderness. The headlights were still on, cutting through the heavy rain. The tires were sunk deep into the mud, and the doors were unlocked. But when investigators looked inside, the vehicle was completely empty. The car belonged to the Martin family, a father, a pregnant mother, and 3 young daughters who had gone out to find a Christmas tree and simply vanished from the face of the earth. Police found a loaded pistol on the floorboard and a bloody rag nearby. But of the 5 people who were in this car, not a single footprint was ever found leading away from the scene. The scene looked like a stage set for a horror movie, but devoid of any actors. The sheriff of Hood River noted immediately that there were absolutely no signs of violence on the vehicle. The cream and red bodywork had no fresh dents. The glass wasn't shattered. It was as if the driver had simply pulled over to admire the view and evaporated into the mist. Inside the car, life seemed paused. On the back seat, leftover fast food bags from a local diner were still there. A gas station receipt stamped the date and time, Sunday, December 7th at 4 p.m. This placed the family on that dark road just before twilight. But who were they? Kenneth Martin, 54, was a prudent and happy man. He worked for the local electric company and was known for never taking unnecessary risks. His wife, Barbara, was heavily pregnant with their 4th child. With them were their 3 daughters, Barbie, 14, Susan, 13, and little Virginia, 11. On that Sunday morning, they hadn't set out for a dangerous adventure. Their plan was the definition of 1950s American innocence. They put on their wool coats, piled into the family station wagon, and drove toward the Columbia River Gorge. Their goal was simple: to collect greenery and pine cones for Christmas decorations. They promised to be back before dinner. Investigators frantically retraced the family's movements. They found witnesses at the Paradise Snack Bar in Hood River, a popular stop for locals. A waitress remembered them clearly. She described a family that was laughing and eating burgers, completely unaware that these were the last meals they would ever share. They left the diner around 4 p.m. as the winter sun began to dip behind the mountains. The receipt found in the car confirmed they bought gas shortly after. Based on the timeline, they drove across the Bridge of the Gods and headed north into Washington state. Context: likely looking for a specific spot to gather their Christmas greens. But back at the abandoned car, the physical evidence was telling a darker story. On the rear floorboard, police discovered a .38 caliber Colt Commander pistol. It had been fired recently. 1 shell casing was found in the chamber. And it got worse. Just a few feet from the open door, investigators found a rock stained with dried red splotches. To the untrained eye, it looked like a violent crime scene. Had the father tried to defend his family? Was this an abduction gone wrong? The clues were contradictory. A peaceful family outing that ended with a loaded gun and a blood-stained rock. Detectives were certain they had found a crime scene. They rushed the blood-stained rock to the state crime lab, expecting it to confirm their worst fears. But days later, the report came back with a baffling conclusion. The substance on the rock wasn't human blood. It was simply dried red paint. The gun found in the car? Ballistics confirmed it hadn't been fired recently. It was just a coincidence, likely left there by Kenneth after some target practice weeks earlier. The theory of a roadside massacre began to crumble. With the ground yielding no answers, eyes turned to the water. The Columbia River flowed silently nearby, deep, cold, and unforgiving. Near the abandoned car, investigators noticed something chilling near the cliff's edge. Tire tracks. They didn't match the Martins' station wagon, but they pointed ominously toward the drop-off. Had the family seen something they shouldn't have? Or was the river hiding the only evidence that mattered? Police launched boats and divers into the freezing water, searching for anything that looked like a body. Weeks turned into months. The heavy snows of winter melted, and the Columbia River began to rise. The Martin family case had gone cold, buried under layers of false leads and unanswered questions. The community of Portland held its breath, hoping against logic that the family had simply started a new life elsewhere. But on May 1st, 1959, nearly 5 months after they vanished, the river finally gave up its secrets. A construction crew operating a drilling rig near the Dalles, miles downstream from the abandoned car, felt their heavy anchor snag on something deep underwater. They expected to pull up a sunken log or debris. Instead, they brought to the surface the first tragic pieces of the puzzle. It wasn't the car. It was the bodies of Susan and Virginia. The discovery sent shock waves through the state. The medical examiner confirmed the cause of death was drowning. There was no foul play, no gunshots, no abduction. The truth was far simpler and far more terrifying. The Martin family had perished in the freezing water. This discrepancy creates a haunting gap in the narrative. The distance between where the station wagon was found and where the bodies were recovered is not a short walk. It is a treacherous hike over rugged, steep terrain. Two main theories have emerged over the decades. The first is the tragic accident. Investigators speculated that perhaps the family stopped to admire the view, but as night fell and the heavy rain started, they became disoriented. In the pitch-black darkness of the Oregon wilderness, it is terrifyingly easy to lose the road. Did they wander toward the sound of the river, thinking it was a highway, only to slip into the freezing water? However, many locals refused to believe this. Kenneth was a cautious man. He wouldn't lead his pregnant wife and children off a cliff in a storm. This leads to the second, darker theory: the third party. Remember the unidentified tire tracks found near the cliff edge? They didn't match the Martins' car. Some detectives believe the family was intercepted. Was the station wagon planted on the road later to look like an abandonment? Was the family forced into another vehicle and driven to the water's edge? The presence of the loaded gun suggests Kenneth felt he needed protection. But from whom? The discovery of Susan and Virginia brought a heartbreaking closure to the hope of survival, but it opened a terrifying new mystery. If the station wagon was found parked on the road, how did the children end up miles downstream in the river? Investigators were baffled. Did the family walk down to the water's edge in the darkness and slip? Did someone force them out of the vehicle and march them to the cliffs? The tire tracks found nearby never matched any suspect. The gun found in the car never fired a fatal shot. The bodies of Kenneth, Barbara, and the eldest daughter, Barbie, were never recovered. They remain lost to the Columbia River, claiming the gorge as their final resting place. Decades have passed. The heavy rains of the Pacific Northwest have washed away all physical traces, but the question remains carved into the local history. On that cold December night, the Martin family didn't just drive into the dark. They drove out of reality. And the silent forests of Oregon are the only witnesses that know why.